So how did the podcast host get started? How did I get into this? It was back, actually, I'm going to go back before that because it really started, my online business journey really started with Mountain Bikes Apart. Mountain Bikes Apart, that is. I always rush through the name. It's a mountain biking website because mountain biking is really my passion outside of the podcast host. And that was my first experiment with online content, really. That was back in 2007. I founded that after first starting to listen to podcasts. It was listening to Internet Business Mastery, really, the Boag World podcast, a few different things that really got me into it. And that started the whole journey around podcasting in general as a listener. It started me teaching podcasting at university as well at the time, around 2007, 2008. But really it was blogging for the Mountain Bikes Apart website really that got me into this. Over the years, I'm not going to go too much into that because that was really just part-time. It was really just a hobby at the time. Did put out a couple of blogs every month though, maybe fortnightly at the time. So it kind of started to hone my skills around what readers are looking for, around how to write a decent blog post, around how to do a bit of SEO, try and find what people are looking for, and cater to that. That's kind of what I learned through those years between 2008 and about end of 2010. That really took me into running the podcast host. Over that time, I was teaching podcasting. I was doing a lot of podcasting internally in a university in Edinburgh, Edinburgh and Napier. And that was when I learned my podcasting skills, I suppose, through those few years. Started Podcraft during that time, teaching people how to podcast. Within the university only then. It wasn't actually open to the public at that point. I didn't have a public podcast, I think, until about 2011-12, I believe it was, for the Edinburgh Napier podcast I put out for the uni. It was all internal at that point, and it was all teaching lecturers how to do internal podcasts for their students. But in end of 2010, 2011, that's when I founded thepodcasthost.com. I bought the domain the end of 2010, I think it was November 2010, and the first post went up. Where is it now? It was the start of, 22nd of February 2011. That's when the stats started Google Analytics as well. And really it was slow progress over that first year. It was just kind of, the reason I started the site at that point actually was for hosting. I actually started it to do a bit of writing because I'd been having a bit of success and joy in doing the Mountain Bikes Apart podcast, but really it was because the people that were starting to podcast within the university, I found a lot of the hosting solutions at that point, particularly Podbean were the kind of main one at the time. It was quite unreliable. The support was terrible, actually. Like, things would go down for a day or two at a time. I was running a podcast course at one point with lecturers, and the podcast host that I was using went down for an entire week, and I couldn't run the course because my podcasts weren't available. So I had a background's web design, so I started the podcast host initially so that I could just host my podcasts on there. I set up a WordPress multi-site network. I stuck on a bunch of the university podcasts on there, and I offered it outwardly as well. I let people subscribe to it. So my first money made online really was in that way. It was people paying me to host their podcasts on the podcasthost.com. And that was where the name came from. It was the podcast host, as in a hosting provider, as opposed to what it is now, which is about the podcast host, as in the host of a podcast. So it was a very different start to what I initially planned. And throughout 2012, when really I was growing that side of the business, I wasn't blogging a huge deal. I put out maybe about 10 to 12 posts throughout that year, mainly a series that I wrote, which was how to podcast. It was really what a podcast is, how to subscribe, how to download them, and then a little bit about how you start to create your own shows. And that was based a bit on the teaching I was doing at the university. Through 2012, it was pretty steady growth. Went from about 5 to 10 users a day up to about 30 users per day by the end of 2012. And I was starting to get some steady traffic during 2013. And throughout 2013, I managed to put out one a month. So it was pretty infrequent. I mean, it's not putting out much in the way of blogging throughout 2013, one blog post per month. But I'd been learning a lot at this point through working with some other clients as well. I was doing a bit of freelance web design at the time. Been learning a lot about SEO, about targeting. And every post I put out was really targeted towards a particular phrase, towards a particular search. I was starting to think about the questions people were asking, the things people were searching for in podcasting. So even though I was doing it infrequently at that point, throughout 2013, wasn't very often. Every single post I put out was very purposeful. It wasn't just trying stuff out. It was really targeting things that I thought might start to draw some traffic. And at that point, I was thinking about drawing traffic for the purposes of growing the hosting business. So getting more hosting customers. I thought if I wrote about, mixers or microphones or digital recorders, all that kind of thing, I thought that people would come to that and I'd be able to sell them the hosting service. That was the plan at the time. So that's the kind of thing I started to write about. So I started to target those equipment searches. That's the important part, I suppose, at this point, given where we are these days. We were getting some searches for the hosting as well. So there was a bit of cross-pollination here. People were finding us for the equipment searches. They were searching for things like best mixers, best mics, all that kind of stuff. And they were finding our hosting services, so that was growing a little bit. But they were also searching for hosting. Actually, I was doing okay for the term podcast hosting. I was showing up for that. So people were finding us for that, not necessarily signing up for that, and finding the blog posts instead. So people would actually read about the equipment. Now, throughout 2013, now when was it? I was getting, let's keep to the numbers here. So by the start of 2014, it was up to about 125 users per day. So 125 people per day were viewing the site. And by the end of 2014, I was up to about 350. So that's where the real growth started. I'll go into the revenue just after this, but let's go through the stats for traffic first, just to give you a picture, because 2014 really was where it started to grow a fair bit. And I realised that 350 users a day, 350, skipping over the numbers here, 350 users a day isn't a massive amount, but that was 3 times growth through the year. And that acceleration, I think, was because that was when I moved to real regular blogging. I was fortnightly blogging, still not like weekly or even bi-weekly, still fortnightly blogging, but keeping to that really regular, focused, purposeful approach, thinking about exactly what I'm writing about every single time. I continued Podcraft at that point as well. Podcraft had released publicly the year before, I believe. 2013, maybe even 2012 actually. But Podcraft had been out. I started getting some more of those seasons out. And season 2 and 3 came out during 2014 for Podcraft. And by the end of the year, I tried an experiment where I was podcasting daily. So I did a month, November I think it was, where I podcasted every single weekday. So I got 20 episodes out in a week. So during 2014, my output went up a fair bit. Even though it was only fortnightly blogging, that was still doubling last year's ratio, I would say, which was monthly. And Podcraft as well was adding more content to the blog. So I was doing good show notes for Podcraft as well. So that meant that, there was a good bit, there was probably at least weekly content going out. And in that month of November, there was daily content going out. So it was showing, the search engines, it was showing users, people that were coming to read the site, that things are ramping up. They're getting more regular at coming back and visiting. So I think that's why we started to grow a lot during 2014, because every year, 2013, I started going regular in terms of once a month. 2014, it was once every fortnight. And then by the end of 2014, it was much more than that. So that regular content it directly translated into traffic. That traffic just grew at a regular pace. So it was proof to me that this thing was working, that the quantity was working, and the quality as well. I mean, I was putting a lot of thought into these posts as well. So let's look at the revenue of that. How that translated into revenue was that our UK earnings for affiliate income, which has been our first bit of income, affiliate income started in about 2008 in the UK. Now that goes back to Mountain Bikes Apart actually, so it was the previous website. It wasn't the podcast host at that point, but I was getting maybe £10 a month from Mountain Bikes Apart, and then added the podcast host to that as well. So started linking to microphones, to mixers, to equipment in these articles I was writing during 2013. So these equipment articles in 2013 started to add to that UK income. So by the end of 2013, I was on about £20, £30, £40 a day for affiliate income. Not much, I realise, but still, it's something. It starts to cover the costs. Now, 2014 is where the affiliate growth really started. Like I said, the traffic started to grow, but affiliate income seemed to grow disproportionately. So, and it was because I was putting out more and more articles. So the traffic was growing, but I was putting out more articles that were concentrated on this. And there was one other thing as well that made a big difference. So 2013, we were on about £30 a month or so. By February, it was on about £40 a month. By May, so middle of the year, it was up to £100. So I'd already doubled affiliate income during that time. Traffic had not doubled by that point. So this was just putting out more articles, which had more links in them. By the end of the year, it was up to 200. So we times 4 just UK affiliate income during 2014. Now, the important thing at this point was I was just linking to UK Amazon right now because I didn't know any better. I was just linking to the UK shop because that's the one that I shopped in. So we were up at 200 end of 2014 with UK Amazon. But during 2014, I started using a plugin which allowed Amazon affiliate localization. Now that means that I could place links which were localized to the local shops. So if you're in America, you would be linked to the American Amazon store. If you were in the UK, you'd be linked to the UK Amazon store elsewhere around the world. So I set up an Amazon US account, which you're allowed to do from anywhere. So that's absolutely fine. So I set that up. And at the start of 2014, February 2014, I set that up. And the very first month, straight away, US Amazon was $165. So I was already beating my UK income by miles. Our traffic is split somewhere along the lines of about 60% US, maybe 20 to 30 UK, and then 10 to 20 the rest of the world. So just putting on that localization so that I was capturing US and UK affiliate income made a massive difference to us. And straight away, obviously, it was on 165. I was amazed throughout that year as I was putting out more and more content growing the business that by the end of 2014, that US income had increased from about 100 a month, 165 that first month, up to about 1,100. So it was on $1,100 by the end of 2014. So that growth over 2014 took us up to probably around £1,200 or so a month in terms of affiliate income. And that was still only on traffic at the end of 2014 was 350 users a day, which isn't massive by any means. 350 people, unique people per day were coming onto our site, and the affiliate revenue was about 1,200. I attribute that mainly to just being quite focused on what I did. I was really just, like I said, I was just thinking about how people were searching. I was thinking about earnings too. I was thinking about how we could generate more affiliate income by offering really valuable stuff. I mean, I was writing about stuff that I knew about microphones I'd tried, mixers I'd tried, about recorders I'd tried, about giving really good advice around this stuff. So people liked it, people enjoyed it. It was giving genuine value, and therefore they clicked the link, they went and bought something on Amazon related to that, and we got a small commission. Didn't cost that person any more. So I saw it as a really nice way to offer really good value to people, create great stuff, but still start to generate an income for the company. Now, of course, the other way we were generating income at this point was the hosting. I think it was around, I can't find data on exactly when we stopped it, but I think it was during 2014 that I decided that it just wasn't a business I wanted to be in, even with only, I think the height of the hosting business, I was hosting maybe 20 or 30 people, so 20 or 30 podcasts max. And I'd tried all sorts of ways to grow that, like offering free trials, like offering different paid tiers, all sorts of ways. But it wasn't something that I was going to grow. It's a commodity business, really. People just go on price. They don't even think about features too much. The guys out there that are really running this, like Libsyn, Blueberry at the time, there was places like Podbean, that type of stuff. I wasn't competing with people like that. I didn't want to compete with people like that. I wanted to offer something more tailored, something I could stand out on that would be less of a commodity. So it was during 2014 I decided to stop offering that and concentrate on the podcast, the content, that type of stuff. But at the height of it, like I say, we were doing about 30 people. I think it was earning, it was about 300 to 400 a month I believe. So it was never massive by any means. I mean, the affiliate income overtook it very quickly during 2014, I think, which was also a factor in why I started to draw away from that, because there was tons of support involved in hosting. Obviously, things went wrong. So that was something that, we drew away from quite quickly, shut that down during 2014, and I still worked with hosting clients for years after that, actually, but it was just people that already were in there, that were just using the service. There was no real support costs there. So, but we stopped offering that because of the commodity type of business it was. Now, that takes you through the story to the end of 2014. So it's at 2015 which I really decided to take the business full time. And I'll talk about that in the next episode, where we went from 2015 into middle of 2016. But it ends with really the decision at that point. I was halfway through my PhD. I'd been doing a PhD at that point, and I was thinking towards the end of it what I was going to do going onwards. And I could see this affiliate income growing. I could see I was really enjoying doing it. I was loving creating this content that was really valuable to people, getting good feedback on it. It seemed to be earning income, which was essentially passive. Not so passive. I mean, passive is a bit of a fallacy. If I stopped writing altogether, it would drop away. So it's never entirely passive. You need to maintain it. But it's still, I mean, you're putting this stuff out there and there's money coming back to you for something that you created months, years ago. So I was loving doing that and enjoying it. And so that's what made the decision, really, that I wanted to try and do that full time. And I'll talk again about how I sort of started to structure that in 2015. So that'll be in the next episode. So that ties up really the story of where the podcast host went, how it was founded, where we went during the time between 2011 of its founding up to 2014, which was really the end of the part-time era of the podcast host. So I hope that was interesting. Give you an idea of, the progress of a content site like that. I think a lot of people start content sites thinking, I'm going to start creating passive income, I'm going to do a blog, I'm going to do a podcast, thinking it's going to be an instant thing. But I mean, you can do it certainly quicker than I did it. But I'm not sure you can do it a lot quicker, to be honest. I mean, that was probably the concentrated content started 2012. So, I mean, that was close on 2.5 years before it started to generate enough income whereby, an average person could maybe think about leaving their job. So like I say, it was on maybe £1,200 by the end of 2014. That's actually a relatively good wage. Well, not good. It's not a good wage, but it's a wage you can live on. So by that point, you could have taken it full time. So that was about 2.5 years from probably first starting content to getting to that stage. So I hope that's interesting. Gives you an idea and maybe makes a realistic sort of picture around what it takes to build something like that.